Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining today. My name is Tracy Amador, and I'm the Global Director of Demand Generation here at Planet. Today, we have the pleasure of introducing your host for this webinar, Jenna Macuno, and she's the Product Marketing Lead for Planet Tasking. Jenna will cover the latest advancements to Planet Tasking and how it's opening up a new paradigm for global intelligence. But before we do that, let's go through a few housekeeping items. There will be a few live polls and questions during the course of the webinar. The polls will appear on your screen, and we encourage you to participate if you could. We're eager to have that content geared towards what the audience today is going to tell us. And second, there's going to be a live Q&A at the end of the webinar, and of course, we encourage your questions there. And if we run out of time, we'll definitely have an email where you can direct any questions or feedback. But also, we have a handout on the right side of your control panel on the GoToWebinar screen. There's a handout there where you can actually click in and download our tasking data sheet. So feel free to do that as well. Lastly, so all of you know, we'll be recording the webinar and we'll distribute the video to all participants in a week or so from today. So without further ado, Jenna, I'm going to introduce you. Over to you.
Thanks, Tracy, for the introduction, and thanks again, everyone, for joining us today. As Tracy said, my name is Jenna, and I'm the Product Marketing Lead at Planet. So here's what our agenda is looking like today. In this webinar, we're going to describe some macro trends that are really changing how people are leveraging satellite imagery across a number of different industries. We're going to propose how these trends are necessitating kind of a new paradigm in what we're calling rapid revisit global intelligence. We'll define what that is, as well as how Planet is facilitating that new paradigm with recent and future product advancements. And lastly, we'll highlight a few flagship use cases in this new paradigm that really point to how customers are already getting value and really describe in more detail what this new paradigm could unlock for you. We'll conclude with live Q&A, and if we, like we said, if we don't have time to answer all your questions, we'll definitely be in touch. So before we jump into the main content, Tracy, what do you think about a live poll?
Let's do it. So we are going to now launch a poll for the audience. As we mentioned, if you could engage, we've now launched a poll, it should show up right in front of you. The question is, the following describes my use of high resolution satellite imagery products. So please select one of the following. We'll give everybody some time to answer. Jenna, what are you trying to get out of this question, and how is this going to maybe help give you a sense of where our audience is?
Yeah, and this question is really geared to understand if the audience has used satellite imagery in the past and to what extent, because Planet works with all different types of customers, some who have never used satellite imagery before, and others who are very seasoned, advanced users that are using it every day. So I would just love to know from this audience kind of where we sit.
Great. So just giving people a couple more seconds. I'm going to close the poll now, and let's look at our results. So it looks like,
interesting.
Yeah, land satellite imagery on a constant basis. That's great.
That's super great, because a lot of this content is actually geared toward people who are very familiar with satellite imagery, specifically high res, and so we want to make sure we're kind of talking to them and meeting their needs. So this is perfect, and I think we're ready to kind of kick off into the main agenda.
Great. Okay, let's do it.
Great. Okay, so now that the poll has concluded, I think we're going to start, like I said in my introduction, with some macro trends of what's going on in the industry. And basically, the world is changing rapidly, and as it becomes more interconnected and globalized, the flow of information is accelerating, the flow of change is accelerating, and it's really creating new demands on organizations and businesses alike. And to make more informed decisions, these organizations really have to have an accurate and up-to-date understanding of insights that affect their interests and how conditions on the ground evolve over time. So you guys need to be able to see what's going on and make decisions fast enough to positively impact your outcomes. But the challenge, of course, is that conditions are often changing so fast, you often fail to see that greater picture, and you don't really have the insight that can transform your organization. And not only that, if the pace of the kind of pre-coronavirus world was already fast, the luxury of time kind of seems to have disappeared. This little poll or this little screenshot is actually something that went around across my LinkedIn because we're seeing that organizations are having to do digital transformation outcomes in the span of 2 months as opposed to 2 years. So it's really unequivocally clear that the pandemic is kind of pushing technology advancement. And the net result of that is really that you need to be agile. You need to be seeing everything, you need to be everywhere at once, and you need to have the right information at the right time to make those decisions that positively impact your business. Of course, being everywhere, seeing everything, sharing that information to those who need it most is far easier said than done. So you often do the best that you can with the data that you have, but you often will make decisions based on either statistical samples or point measurements in time. And sometimes those decisions will pay off or you partially win, but other situations you will make uninformed decisions and inaccurate decisions because you don't have that timely knowledge of what's happening on the ground. So it creates a lot of risk for your organization. And the reason that this is often happening and some of the main ways we see our customers really struggling with satellite imagery is in part because of the limitations of traditional approaches. Of course, satellite imagery can be incredibly valuable, but the usefulness to date has been limited by a number of key factors, and we've kind of outlined the major 4 here, which is that oftentimes imagery is several years or several months out of date, so it doesn't actually reflect what's on the ground. And even imagery that is days old in this new world or in this new normal can provide an incomplete picture of what's going on. Second, satellite collection capacity constraints have meant that traditional solutions can only provide an understanding of a limited portion of the globe or a very specific geography. And if there's competition for that capacity, it means you might be locked out of getting that clear picture or data. Third, inefficient access. This is really all about imagery has been difficult not only to acquire, but access through things like FTPs or hard drives, basically not cloud native solutions that are going to be able to provide customers on-demand access to that data when they need it. And file management systems or file management as a need within an organization is becoming very burdensome. And lastly, of course, historically, it's been really expensive to acquire satellite imagery in the past. And it's led to this situation where satellite imagery has been sort of a nice to have as opposed to kind of central to analysis and very embedded in the workflow. So what we see across our base is that organizations will turn to other alternatives like free data sets that include either out of date or less recent imagery, or they invest in really expensive programs but only use it in a limited capacity. But the net of that all is that they're using both inaccurate and or untimely data to kind of spot check things on the ground as opposed to getting that full comprehensive picture. But as we all know in this world, you kind of need to see everywhere and be everywhere in order to make those timely decisions. So that's why we are here today. All of these aforementioned challenges are necessitating a new paradigm for satellite imagery specifically, which is what we're here to talk about. And this paradigm really boils down to a new approach to get frequent insights in evolving contexts and environments, and it places a greater emphasis on control, transparency, and timeliness in the acquisition process so that organizations get exactly what they need when they need it. So there are a lot of core pillars to this new paradigm. And this paradigm really requires a unique type of data that's global in scope, it's timely, it's consistently captured, and multiple times per day. This means that you can really frequently monitor all of your areas of interest, capturing data on every changing condition. And of course, with these new data sets come insights as well as the ability to identify opportunity and vulnerability, opportunities and vulnerabilities, and look at places with more frequency so that you'll have higher confidence that you're making the right decision at the right time. And in addition, by taking advantage of cloud infrastructure, you can seamlessly integrate this data into your existing models and workflows. And you can even build models and scale your efforts more quickly while reducing costs and driving more connectivity among your organization. So only with all of these 4 pillars in this new paradigm are you really able to get that competitive intelligence to respond to events, manage risk, and ultimately just prioritize your investment in satellite imagery in the right ways and give you higher confidence than ever before. So it's really within this new paradigm that Planet is trying to pioneer a new approach to really empower organizations with intelligence and insights at the right time. Many people who know Planet are actually more familiar with our PlanetScope constellation and its ability to image the world almost every day. We were able to basically reinvent how satellites capture imagery in a more agile fashion so that they are able to look everywhere across the globe every day. We're taking that same creativity that we applied to the PlanetScope constellation and applying it to our high-resolution SkySat constellation so that you have access to higher frequency, more capacity, and transparency to get that intelligence that we speak of that's so critical today. Our aim is really to build a platform that's future-proof, where you can monitor an ever-changing planet multiple times per day to make more accurate and informed decisions. So as the world's turning and the conditions are changing, you can win with more consistency. And essentially, you'll be able to use this new data source to kind of proactively identify blind spots, understand events as they're evolving, and really make decisions at the speed of change. So what does this really mean for you? What are the value and benefits to you? In a nutshell, it's really about using satellite imagery to do more and anticipate ahead. It means being able to capitalize on change within the areas that you care about or to the assets that are important to your company much faster. You can use those patterns and the activity that you spot to really drive efficiencies and streamline your operations, and in many cases, reduce costs. It's really about then being able to deliver these insights across your organization in a frictionless way so that everyone benefits from the data. So whether it's cost savings, reduced man hours, to getting a whole new perspective on your operations, this paradigm is really about new and advanced workflows where satellite imagery are coming together with geospatial data and becoming more embedded in how you work today. So before I move forward, and I want to pause here because I think this is a great time, Tracy, for us to kick off our second live poll.
Great. You know, it's great. It's a good, we're at this midway point. You've now talked about our traditional solutions bringing us to this new paradigm. I'm now going to launch this second poll so that everyone could see. So the question for the audience is, what is the most important to your organization when it comes to acquiring or using satellite imagery, right? So for the audience, we definitely want to know what these priorities are, what features that are available. Jenna, what else is your take on this question and hopes that we can get in terms of the audience engagement here?
Yeah, I think what we really want to understand is what is the topmost priority. There's so many different factors that you have to consider when you're evaluating satellite imagery. And there are certain trade-offs associated with those different feature sets. But in this new world, where speed is kind of a important feature, like we'd like to know from a organizational perspective if that's really true. Or is it about resolution? Or is it simply about costs? So this poll is really meant to get a pulse on what is the topmost priority for everyone in the audience.
Good stuff. And I see a lot of people answering and engaging. Thank you for that. We're actually going to close the poll now, and we're going to look at our results. So just like you mentioned here, Jenna, cost is always a factor. So
sure. Yeah, cost is always the biggest factor that we see, but it's also really encouraging to see that frequency and spatial resolution are important, almost at equal level. So people want to be able to see more and more frequently, which is great, which is what we're hearing too. And I think what Planet's trying to respond to.
Great. Thank you, audience, for that. We're now going to move on.
Great. Okay, so before we discuss sort of the latest advancements to our tasking solutions, I wanted to provide a brief introduction to Planet's flagship product to make sure that we're all on the same page. So flexible tasking is our flagship solution, and it's really built for kind of on-the-fly imagery acquisition anywhere on the globe. So essentially customers will purchase upfront capacity, and they're able to submit their imagery orders whenever they want using the new tasking dashboard, which is something we're going to talk about in depth today. Customers get access to all of the imagery collected during that time period, and it's seamlessly delivered either through our Planet Explorer web application or the API. So really flexible to your needs and what you're looking for. So let's hop over to what's new. I think this is what people are really here to understand. Based on customer feedback, we knew that enhancing spatial resolution was one of the top needs of our customer, and you saw it right in that poll we just took. It was smack dab at equal to the answer about frequency. So we moved really quickly as an organization, and over a 6-month period successfully lowered our SkySat constellation orbit to be able to achieve higher spatial resolution from 72 centimeters to 50 centimeters. This improvement really enables our customers to get a more precise view of changing conditions on the ground, which you'll see in this example where you can zoom in and get much finer detail. You can see lines on the streets and markings, and so really just being able to give that higher depth view of what's going on. Here's another example of an image that is in panchromatic, meaning black and white, and here is the same image but in RGB. So you're really able to distinguish a lot more features than you would at 72 centimeters, which is driving a lot of value for our clients. But it's not just about high resolution, right? You need to be able to get this information when you need it. And so we recently unveiled a new tasking dashboard and API, which is a programmatic interface that basically lets you task the imagery in a very efficient and automated way. You go in, create and edit and modify your orders. You can track the progress toward fulfillment. You can cancel those orders in progress. You can view the metadata and see how things are shaping up, and then also eventually access the collected imagery in Planet Explorer or through the API. So I actually have a quick little video to just show how easy it is to basically submit an order. You go in, you basically name it, you set the parameters for when you want to collect the imagery, and you rank the priority among all the different orders that you have in progress. You can even submit a GeoJSON if you know exactly the coordinates that you're looking for, as opposed to manually entering latitude and longitude. You confirm the order, and it's in our system, and you're ready to go. So it's really that simple. And then on top of that, when the order is submitted, you can basically search and filter for all of the different orders in progress, save those segments, and see how they're tracking, so that you can look based on time, you can look based on status, and sometimes the status is in progress, sometimes it's pending, but you have absolute transparency into this process, which is great, because a lot of our customers kind of want to know where is my order, where is this imagery in the process. So that is now available to our customers and really gives you more control over the image acquisition process, which we think is really important. So here's a graphic that shows just how many launches we've had over the years for the SkySat constellation. And I wanted to call out on the right that we're actually now launching additional SkySats. So in June, we launched 3 additional SkySats, and we're going to be launching an additional 3 later this summer. We actually just captured our first light image. This is an example of one of the first images taken from our SkySat 17, and you'll see that it's capturing, this is an image in the Yakima River in Washington that shows some agricultural lands captured on July 18th. So this is really exciting, and as we are commissioning these satellites, we're going to have more updates for you. But the net of launching more satellites in space is that we're really going to be able to unlock more opportunities to capture change, and that's really exciting. So we're going to be able to observe events much more frequently than ever before. And we call this our rapid revisit capability. So rapid revisit refers to the ability to image a single location multiple times per day. Right now, we already offer the highest revisit capability of any commercial provider, and that's giving our customers sort of early and frequent imagery all the time. It's giving them shorter intervals between imagery captures to kind of understand change on an intraday basis. So with 6 satellites in orbit, and by the end of this year, we will be able to capture up to 12 times over a single location in certain latitudes, and globally across the Earth, 7x or 7 times revisit over a single location. So this is really exciting for us. It's something that we really think is going to unlock a lot of value, and we're excited to share more updates as we have it. But it's not just about revisit. Of course, being able to image a single place multiple times is important. That's only one side of the coin. It's really the dual nature of Planet's 2 constellations, so the medium resolution PlanetScope constellation and the higher resolution SkySat constellation that we focused on today in this webinar. It's when these 2 constellations are combined that you have even greater flexibility for monitoring. So this really gives our customers unparalleled visibility into world events because they can leverage the PlanetScope constellation, so for broad area monitoring, always on at medium resolution. And when they see something change, they then are able to leverage the SkySat constellation to get a closer look and something very targeted and specific. So let me show you an example of what that really looks like. This is an image taken on July 3rd of this year. And it was essentially, we got a tip that this nuclear site had an explosion of some kind. And you'll see in this image the arrow, which kind of points to some signal of damage, but we really didn't know what was going on. And in fact, the image was analyzed by experts at the James Martin Center for Non-Proliferation Studies to kind of understand what's going on here. So they saw this image in PlanetScope. They were able to tip a SkySat and get a much higher resolution view to show that damage to the building. You can actually see a lot of the debris on the ground. So it's really that near daily coverage of PlanetScope that's followed by the higher resolution SkySat that's giving us both a better understanding and an understanding of where to use the SkySat constellation to the highest to the best places and directed at the places that need to be seen most. So this is really a great example of how Planet is trying to provide a complete holistic solution to our customers. Now that I've talked about the latest advancements and capabilities, Tracy, we're in the home stretch, and I wanted to conclude with a live poll with one final question to the audience that's all about different use cases.
Great, let's launch it. So we're launching the poll to the audience, and the question for you all is, which of the following describes your use case need for high resolution satellite imagery? And I could see even in the audience, Jenna, just looking at who we have attending, you know, we have different verticals in different markets with us today, which again is great because we have, you know, Planet satellite imagery can capture and apply to all of these different verticals. What is your take here, and what do you think we're getting from the audience in terms of how they are going to answer here?
Yeah, so we're just really interested in knowing like what the applications are for your use of satellite imagery. The options in front of you are kind of the top, but we included other because every day when we're talking to customers, we're discovering new use cases and applications that fall outside of these four. And so we're really trying to get a sense of like, what other things are people doing, because we're constantly surprised at Planet and trying to support these customers in their use cases. So these are kind of the top, but I'm curious to see if other is going to be the leading category.
I am too. Okay, so I'm going to give a couple more seconds, see people engaging, and I'm going to close the poll now. And let's look at the results. Oh, so there you have it.
Interesting.
Yeah.
It's kind of evenly spread, to be honest. I mean, aside from, you know, change to forests and natural resources, which is a very like strong classic use case that we've seen. We have a lot of customers in forestry or natural resource protection. So I actually thought other would be a bigger category, but it's kind of right in line with some of the other top use cases, which is interesting.
Yeah, and we have a great amount of use cases for all of these different vertical markets. So thank you, audience. We're going to hide the poll and let's continue on. Jenna, over to you.
Great. Okay, so like I said earlier, we're in the home stretch. So this is actually an animation that shows, and it's very fast. So I'm going to go back to just show you that this is sort of an example of 4X revisit. So there's 4 separate images in this this little animation, and this was captured before we actually made any improvements to 50 centimeter or for spatial resolution. But it just gives you a glimpse of if you want to be able to capture, and I don't think the animation is working. Oh, there it is. There we go. So there's 4 separate images showing movement over a single port. And this is before we even launched the 3 satellites, so we'll be able to do more in the future. But it gives you that real-time kind of picture of change that's different than just having a single capture over a day. And the reason that this is important is actually in a separate incident that just happened actually this past or earlier this year. There was a fire at a naval base in California, and we were actually able to capture sort of a really interesting before and after view of that accident or that fire. And so the combination of both like more revisit on a daily basis, but also having that before and after image is what's really unlocking kind of new value, because you're able to see sort of the pre-state and the post-state. So this is a use case that we're seeing more and more. I know that we just concluded the poll, and a lot of people on the line are here from the forestry sector, or at least natural resource protection. So I wanted to flash another tip and cue example that dealt specifically with timber harvesting. So this is actually a planet scope image. It's not the higher resolution SkySat, but this client was using planet scope to kind of monitor changes to the forest in order to do site prep before they went in to do harvesting. So this was captured on May 25th. And when they knew that they were going to do harvesting activities, they then started utilizing SkySat. And so to like get that finer view and more granular detail. So the image on the left is taken on June 8th. The one in the middle is June 19th. And then the final image is June 7th or 27th. And from these images, they actually digitized the boundaries and were able to, in their inventory software, kind of notate when harvesting had been completed by their crews on specific dates, which is really important because they were using third-party harvesters, and so they wanted to make sure that work was completed on time when they said it was, and efficiently. So this is sort of an example of where PlanetScope can give you that kind of macro view for change. SkySat gives you an even more detailed, you can see certain log piles being prepared on the sides of the road. So this is just like a great tip and cue example that I think others would appreciate on the line. Of course, things happen in the world when it's changing quickly, and if you want to be able to understand it in full, you need multiple captures. So this is another SkySat series over, I think, 4 to 6 days that's showing Africa's biggest hydropower project that where recent rains were kind of filling the reservoir. And it was actually a moment where there could have been kind of geopolitical implications for countries downstream of this reservoir. And having this sort of real-time view of the water levels changing was really important because they were trying to confirm whether the government had formally kind of authorized the reservoir to be filled, or if this was just the result of recent rains. So having that kind of ongoing picture of progress is really going to be important for different types of analysis on the ground. Lastly, I wanted to switch to another kind of similar example, but this is a photo of Midland, Michigan. This is on May 13th. This is the pre-state before they suffered some really awful flooding. And because of the nature of the SkySat constellation being able to pass over a single location both in the morning and afternoon, you can get 2-time captures. So this is the first capture in the morning where the flood is, very visibly in progress. And it kind of looks like snow, but it's actually just the reflection of the water coming off and hitting the satellite sensor. So this is in the morning. And over that same day, you can see this image here that shows kind of the after effect or in progress of that flood. But with 2 captures, you're kind of really able to get much more of a real-time view. And as we get more revisit in the future, you'll be able to see even more detail as it progresses. This is a different part of Midland, Michigan. The Edenvale Dam was heavily impacted by the flood and actually collapsed on May 19th. So this image shows kind of the site of the dam both in the morning and the afternoon on May 20th. That shows sort of all the water flowing downstream down into the river. So again, great instance of where having 2 captures is really going to unlock better intelligence on the ground. And the last example I wanted to share was actually for the customer or the audience members who were talking about infrastructure monitoring being really important to them, because SkySat plays a really important role there as well. This is the San Francisco International Airport last July, and they were actually doing renovations and upgrades to one of their areas. And so what we were asked to do is sort of track that progress over time. And this is just actually a small sampling of the imagery we captured. They were requesting more like weekly imagery over the site as the construction was occurring. So you'll see this is sort of a series from April through this year. Of course, you know, the airports had people on the ground being able to track this progress. So the satellite imagery was actually not to just track for their own internal purpose, but they were providing this imagery as evidence to the regulatory bodies that they needed to show the work was complete and operational, and that progress was being made on the timelines that they had suggested. So it's really another good look at just how, you know, more frequent captures are really going to be able to unlock a different type of insight and evidence to reduce risk across your decision making. So with that, I kind of given you a taste of different use cases. We've talked about this new paradigm. I just wanted to spend a second or two to promote our upcoming Planet Explore event, because registration is now open. And if you want to learn more about the work that we're doing for the SkySat constellation, as well as learn about new product releases and updates, this is where you're going to hear it. So definitely reserve your seat now. We have panels specifically geared toward the SkySat product updates, as well as what new features are going to unlock this new paradigm that we're driving toward. It's in October, it's virtual and free to attend, so we really hope that you're able to join us. And with that, I'm going to open it up for live Q&A, which is, I'm sure, what most people are here to really get their answers. So Tracy, let's give people a little moment to submit their questions, but I think we can, once you have a good sampling, let's kick it off.
Yeah, let's do it. And I want to remind the audience, you know, on the right side of your control panel, there's a section there where you can submit questions into a question box, and we'll get it and we'll read it out. And Jenna, we have a ton coming in so far. So people were submitting as you were talking and presenting throughout. So okay. I'm just going to go into the first one. Are you ready for this?
I hope so. Let's try it.
Let's do it. Okay, so the first question I have that's come in, how does Planet satellite imagery compare to other satellite imagery in terms of spatial resolution?
Okay, got you. So for the PlanetScope constellation, which is that always-on monitoring of everywhere in the globe, it's more like medium resolution, so 3.7 meter. But for SkySat, which is what we've described in depth today, we just recently enhanced spatial resolution to 50 centimeters orthorectified. And that's really kind of the sweet spot for our customers. There are other providers that provide higher resolution than 50 centimeters, closer to 30 or 15. But what we've really seen is that 50 centimeters is that sweet spot. And it gives them enough detail to see what they need. And often they can complement it with other data so they get that understanding. And so there's higher resolution out there, but ours is sort of right where we see the most value for the most use cases that we kind of service. And the frequency aspect of our SkySats is really kind of where we play and bring a different sort of advantage than just purely spatial resolution. So it really depends on kind of your priorities, which is partly why we launched that poll. Sometimes frequency is more important than just spatial resolution alone. Hope that answers that question.
Yeah, no, good answer. It looks like in relation to that, we do, you know, you talk about 50 centimeter A
Yeah.
question actually came in. Can you use SkySat imagery alongside drone or aerial? The question is if one is better than the other. What's your take on that?
Yeah, so we actually have seen many instances where SkySat is kind of used more on a monitoring basis or a frequent basis, and then drones are used to get an even more higher resolution view. So it's almost like that tip and cue scenario where SkySat and drone are used in a complementary nature. But there are use cases where SkySat can actually replace drone because the resolution is good enough to get kind of the information they need. And so we've had customers actually move away from drone or aerial and replace their use with SkySat because it's either more frequent or the turnaround for getting that imagery is faster and it's more convenient to the way their workflows are set up. So oftentimes it's not a question of either or. There can be a way that using both is great. And in other cases, it is really one or the other, depending on, what the application is. So it's not really one is better than the other. It just depends on, what you're trying to achieve.
Got it. Okay, great. We're getting a lot of questions coming in on minimum price and cost, and I'm just going to kind of bundle all of those questions as if I can together. One comes in from a small agency in state government. I work at a small agency within the state government with limited budget. What are the minimum prices or packages that are available to me?
Yeah, that's a great question. We at Planet work with a lot of different agencies within state governments that have totally different budget needs, and we're able to really meet most of them where they are because our packaging is pretty flexible. And so, there are some minimums, but on the whole, we've been able to kind of meet them where they are, and we have packages that are set up to kind of get them um, to where they are, to what their needs are. So I wouldn't say I would say that we service a lot of different agencies of all sizes, and that just reach out and work with us and see where you are. The other thing is we just actually announced a global reseller partnership with Esri. And so we know a lot of state and local governments are kind of Esri shops, and we're able to now partner with Esri to really build a better kind of solution and ecosystem for state governments to kind of get value out of the data faster. So definitely reach out. You'll see my email in the next slide, or contact our sales team because we want to be able to hear from you and work with you. So
Great. Okay, thank you for that. And actually, I'm going to bring you all the way across the pond. We got a question coming in from somebody in Edinburgh, Scotland. And you talked about the rapid revisit. The question is, I'm looking for imagery near Edinburgh, Scotland, and can you guarantee up to 12 times revisit over any location near there?
Got it. So I will say that, like I mentioned, we just launched the first 3 SkySat satellites. We're looking to launch the next 3 later this summer, and when that is completed, we will be able to achieve up to 12x capture, but it does vary by geographic conditions. So there are certain locations where up to 12x is possible. There are others where it's more difficult to achieve because of feasibility, and it's more likely that we'll hit, 7 to 10 revisit. And we're actually going to be kind of understanding that as we launch. So while I can't say specifically or guarantee now that in your location we can do 12x, like as we launch the satellites and commission them, we'll be able to provide a better understanding of that. So stay tuned, I guess, is the answer.
Okay, great. Just a couple more questions because I know we're pretty much at time. One more question. It comes from the academia side, which we're getting a lot of questions from the audience around this. Do you have offerings that support academic researchers?
Yes, that's a great question. It's sort of similar to the answer that I have for state governments, but we have specific packages designed for researchers and academic institutions that are, really like flexible and affordable, so that our researchers are able to kind of test and use their data, use our data for their academic work. So I encourage you to check out Planet's education and research page, or reach out to me if you have specific questions, because we can look into it and get you set up with a license. So yes, please reach out.
Great. And you know what I'm going to do? We're at the last question, Jenna, and I'm going to try to squeeze this one in. It's kind of combined into one. Is the tasking dashboard supported as a mobile application? And if so, can everyone get a demo of the tasking dashboard?
Sure. So the dashboard interface is offered and supported on the web for now, but the API can be used to build, of course, a mobile application on top of it. So it depends. If you're looking just to use it in a desktop setting, we obviously support that. The API is where you'd really start building your own application to your needs. And yes, we do offer demos. Just reach out. And in fact, what I'm going to do now, since we're almost at time, just going to flash this wrap up page so that you have not only just resources from our website about learning about what's coming up. Tracy called out the data sheet in the right hand panel, which I really encourage you to download for more information. And if you want to talk to me or our team, I've included some links. I'm happy to facilitate any other questions and direct you to the right people at Planet.
Awesome. Well, great. That concludes our webinar event. Thanks so much to you, Jenna, for putting all of this together, and to the audience. We thank you for attending today. Just a reminder, we will have the webinar on demand in case you want to listen to it or even send it to a colleague. We'll have it available for everyone. So as Jenna mentioned, download that handout. We'll also include it when we send out emails on demand. But in that case, we're ready to wrap up. Thanks again, Jenna, and everyone have a great day.
Yep. Thanks, Tracy. Thanks, everyone. Have a good one.